All right, this is our second tape, and we left off with something about a bomber question.
Yeah, it's a thing that we can put a note in the file here to ask Jim if we can find him. Maybe even,
Almost lost the whole
maybe
thing.
maybe even ask Paul if he remembers. He might remember the story. But the story was that one of Cynthia's jobs in the military was cleaning out airplanes, and that her recollection was that she had cleaned out the plane that the next day dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. And so we just need to sort of see if that's
See if that's a legend or
yeah, see if that's
what.
a fake remembrance or something.
So later in life, I know Cynthia got involved in political questions and lobbied
Yeah,
people. And
she, like,
of course, she had a long teaching career in Corpus.
yeah.
Right.
So, kind of going back to what I remember, I remember we lived with the grandpa and grandma. We lived with Nanny and Pawpaw on Air Street in a little apartment next to another little apartment that Connie and Sherry and Beth lived in. This was after Beth was divorced.
So your family shared an apartment with Nanny and Pawpaw.
Yeah, Nanny and Pawpaw had a house. In the back of the house were two apartments, 2-story, walk upstairs, and in one of them, again, I don't remember anything about the inside, but one of them, Mom and Dad and Jim and I lived in, and the other one, Beth and Connie and Sherry lived in.
Do you remember the address on Air Street?
No, but I've actually, in years past, gone by there and seen it, and then in other years past, more recently, gone by and seen that it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
The positioning that you could look at on a map 20 years ago was a drive-in movie theater, and then a big lot behind it that then was bordered by Air Street. So Air Street was out front, and it was a 200 or 300 yard long yard to get to the house. So I can remember you could be in your house and stand there, and it was just like it would take you all day to walk to Ayers. It was just such a deep lot. And what I remember was that our life would be all the parents, which would be Beth and my mom and my dad, off working. My mom would have been a teacher there. My dad would be running his auto parts. And our sweet little Nanny would be there and would have all the grandkids. We'd have Connie and Sherry and me and Jim. And most of what would happen is she would have us go get in the bedroom and turn on the fan and get some cool air blowing over you in the hot, non-air conditioned Corpus Christi heat, and go, take naps. And otherwise, we would run around.
Were me and Rick involved at all
No.
over there? I don't remember being over there.
You may have been you may have been sent over there. It was mostly just the four of us.
Yeah.
And that was the time that Connie and I did this thing and blew flour all over the place. That was a kind of a mess. But the other thing I remember was Pawpaw had a big cart, a big 4-wheel cart that was probably 4 feet by 4 feet, that us kids would get on, and he would push us back to the fence at the back of the drive-in theater, so we could look across the way at the big screen, and there was enough sound coming off the little car speakers hanging on the cars. And stinky buildings that had cats living in them, and the stinky of cats and rats in these buildings that we never really went into, a big high brush that was not very friendly, but just a real nice, huge front yard that you could run and run and run. And I guess.
See, I never remember anything unless Nanny was at Kirkwood.
Yes, so this would have been all before they, I guess, sold that, and probably made some money. I mean, again, in the day, that was a pretty big piece of property, and had a house and 2 apartments, and lots of land. You could there were buildings in the back you could store stuff in. Don't remember Paw being there. I don't know whether there was some issue that he was estranged from Nanny or whether he was just working doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He would have had a whole history that us kids never really learned much about. But anyway, so there, and from there, there was a little window that we moved back to the apartments that were on top of the auto parts store. And then my only recollection then is we moved to Baker Drive, where it was in a neighborhood where the Elledge kids lived, that Johnny and George and Alan and Luann all grew up around the
They were
corner.
on Merrill Street.
On Merrill Street, yeah. We were on Baker Drive and they were on Merrill Street, and you could ride your bike over to them. And it was the kind of neighborhood and the time of life that kids, boys and girls would, ride their bikes all over the place. And again, at that point, Cynthia would have been teaching somewhere, and we would probably be, well, I even remember specifically that the elementary school I went to, and you can picture, what age I would have been in that 5 or 6 years old, I guess, to 8 or 9 or 10 in the elementary, that my mother set it up where, because she wanted me to be healthy, that for lunch I would walk down some busy street to a little boarding house where all these old people lived, and she prepaid lunch, and I would walk to the boarding house and there would be a table set with mashed potatoes and carrots and salad and biscuits and hot rolls and bread, and it's a huge pile of wonderful food, and I would eat and then walk back home, like where you would
walk back to school.
Walk back to school. Yeah.
Yeah.
A situation that you would never today send your 7 or 8 year old kid
Yeah.
to walk down a busy street and go sit with a bunch of old people
Yeah.
in a little
That's
boarding
interesting.
house.
That is characteristic of your mom. She
Yeah.
wanted you guys
She
to
wanted us to be
be
healthy.
healthy.
So kind of moving on into there somewhere, Cynthia started, actually I think before she got into political stuff,
Their teaching career. She had a long.
well, she was still teaching, and during her teaching career, she was continuing to work on a master's in education. And so one of her, she would go to one of the colleges down in Kingsville to get some classes, and she also booked 2 different summers to go to a summer school in teaching in Gunnison, Colorado, a little cute town in the middle of Colorado. And in each of those years, my brother and I would go up there with her, and she would rent a 2-bedroom in a dormitory. And I remember adventures there of ultimately, during the second time that we did that, I wanted to stay because I had commandeered a job working on the campus, and I don't know what I was doing, like gardening or something, and I had met a cute girl that was, I don't know how, she was like actually in college, so I would have been like 17 or 18 or 16 or something like that, and she was 19 or 20, college girl with a car.
Yeah.
And
Older woman.
older woman with a car, and she had a friend, and the guy I was buddies with on the gardening crew. We would go hang out with him, and I think that's the first time I was ever in a Volvo.
Oh.
She had a stick shift, old, sweepy looking Volvo.
No wonder you love Volvos. That was like
That's where I first
associated your first love,
first got tied into Volvos. So anyway, so Cynthia did a couple of years, kind of continued on, and then at some point, you will know when she and Jim went up to where your family was living.
Yeah.
And she went to Columbia University.
Yeah.
And ultimately, somehow, I think her degree ended up showing up as Columbia, which was kind of a cool thing.
Pretty.
Teachers with a master's in education business from
Columbia. Yeah.
And
Ivy League school.
Ivy League school, and um, I'm trying to think.
Now, how old was she, you suppose, when she finished and got that master's? Must have been in the 60s, because that's when we were in New Jersey.
Yeah, so let's think about that. Yeah, in the 60s. So I would have been kind of starting into high school, where I graduated in 64, so it would have been in the 60s when I was in high school.
So would she have been 45 or 50 or something? Or?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't know.
She was born in 1919. I remember that.
Okay, so 1969 would have been 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
She's probably in her late 40s.
somewhere in the window of all that.
My mom got her master's when she was about 50.
Where did she do that?
She
when
was
you guys
in
were
Missouri Western. At Missouri, Dad had a job in Missouri up there somewhere, and that's where she finished up college up there.
And even though that's blanked out, it's still going?
It's still going, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that was an interesting time that you and your brothers got to hang out with Jim,
Mm-hmm.
and that Jim got to really kind of get plugged in with you guys. You know, if at some point we talk about how in Corpus, all the kids played together, Jim spent more time probably tied in with you guys. I was just older enough to.
That's right. You were old enough. We were just
something
pests,
else, and y'all
yeah.
were just just little kids, and
Yeah.
even though Rick was pretty much my age, somehow
He's now. I think he just turned 75.
so he's still young. Yeah, so you guys would all been
Yeah,
little kids.
just little kids.
So I'm kind of tying this. All right, so Columbia and Masters, and I'm not
Now,
sure.
when she came back to Corpus after the master's degree,
Yeah.
was she in the administration of the Corpus Christi school system or a teacher?
She was still being a teacher, and the first time that she really utilized that experience and that degree was after she and Dad had actually built this house and were living up here. And so I'm trying to sort of figure when her politics, I think,
It really kicked off when Ross Perot ran.
yeah,
But she was involved before then.
she was very involved with the school with teachers' pay. So that was something while she was living in Corpus Christi. We had moved out of the Baker Street house to the Palmetto Street house, and Palmetto, the word palm, was came from the fact that the street we were on, called Palmetto Street, was lined with palm trees all the way down to Ocean Drive, and you could just take another step and be in the ocean. And so that house was, that may or may not have been her Ross Perot time, but that was definitely getting closer to her utilizing her degree and her education to talk to people in Texas politics about teacher pay. And
When Ross Perot came along, she lived in Maryland, because I remember she became the Maryland State Chair of the United We Stand America
Right.
program.
so let's keep that off to the side then, and be on Palmetto during the time that she was selling real estate. So she got a real estate license and was able to buy and sell real estate in Corpus Christi, in addition to being a teacher, in addition to lobbying Texas
She's busy.
for better stuff. And then the big storm came in and wrecked auto supply and blew windows out of the
Was that
Palmetto
Carla,
house.
Hurricane Carla? Or Celia?
Celia, maybe, whichever one it was that was. I'm trying to think. So I would have been already at UT, which would be 67, 68, 69.
Oh, that was way after Carla.
Yeah, so it would have been in that 68, 69 window
Yeah.
that whichever storm
Whatever big storm.
wrecked everything. She got real busy there and bought and sold stuff, and I remember put together again some real estate deals. just in the typical Elledge way, went to the emergency management people and got disaster loans, and instead of fixing up the house with a disaster loan, bought some property with some other people, and that property, like within 6 months, doubled in price. So,
Nice.
in the meantime, she, while our house was broken, she bought several houses, because I remember coming down from college, finding my dad's store broken, the house on Palmetto empty with windows boarded up, and finding ultimately that my mom and dad had moved into a house that they had bought, the second or third house. Like, so when the storm came, whatever she did, she bought several houses and lived in one of them for a while. And
Did she buy them because they were damaged, or?
she bought them probably damaged and then resold them real quick.
Yeah.
So she basically just was super active in
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff. Little brother Jim was went into a carpenters union and got a carpenters union certificate or something, and got on different crews building fences, and hated that. He did that and found out it was hard work.
Hard work.
Working in the
Post
sun,
hole digger.
building fences. But it was like following all that they went ahead and made the decision to relocate to the Dripping Springs. So that would have been as I got into,
Which is where we are tonight.
yeah, this is where we are tonight. And so I remember 1969, my senior year. There was not yet a house here. There was a little trailer parked right outside here where we have a tree that has a little rock wall around it that was here for some reason with a rock wall around it before the house was built. And we had a trailer there that was a tiny, tiny trailer, and Mom and Dad would come up here and stay in the tiny trailer and do something. And I remember that it was a cool thing to come out here and bring my date to the little trailer in the country. And I don't remember too much about that, but I remember that that was 1969. And so somewhere following that, in the early 70s, this house got built, and I would come down and help do stuff in the house, or come down and find that my mom and dad had friends over that had come up from Corpus, and they would all be painting and bricklaying and and sheetrocking and stuff. And so somewhere after that, my little brother got married and moved to Maryland, and actually first moved to California, if I can get the timing right. And so how that affected Cynthia, since this is kind of her story, is when they moved there and had their first grandchild in our family, they decided that they would go out there and see them, fell in love with the area, rented an apartment, came back, put this house up for lease, found somebody that would sign a lease on this house and move in, and put the money in the bank to pay for the house, and then they lived in California. And then at some point Jim moved from California to Maryland, and they followed and actually bought a house in Maryland.
She must have moved to Oakland because she wanted to be near that baby.
Yes.
And she had a very personal relationship with Amelia.
Yeah.
And
probably drove Jim crazy. Definitely she is like Amelia's second mom.
Yeah.
And Amelia remembers it that way, that they would just, Jim would be working, probably actually was working at Lawrence Livermore Labs for Cray at that time.
And what was Patricia doing? She had worked, isn't she?
She did. She's always done something related to public service.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the story. Like right now she works in like a food pantry kind of place.
But I know Cynthia was from that generation that said, I don't know about moms working for a living.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
but she worked. But she herself was a workaholic.
She was a workaholic.
So
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know I don't know
calling
that
the
there was
kettle
totally
black.
a period that
Yeah.
Cynthia like really didn't do any work except just be a mom. But
Yeah.
there was a little bit of a window. I know there was a little window that we lived probably before Jim, because I picture me being a toddler, me being like 2 years old or something, running around in my dad's auto parts store because we lived in the apartments above his auto parts store.
Mm.
And my mom would always tell the stories about as early as I could even crawl, she would go downstairs and like mop and sweep all the floor in this big dirty warehouse building, and then let me get down on my hands and knees and crawl and play with the nuts and bolts and, and go get lost in the shelves in the back of the auto parts place. So that would have been, her window of probably being a stay-at-home mom, but at the
Yeah.
same time, she's doing the books for the company
Yeah.
and living in the
Yeah.
same building as the
Yeah. Maybe
as the
she was
business.
big on stay-at-home mom when the kids are small.
When the kids are small
Yeah.
and they're controllable, and when they're big enough to not kill themselves, you can get
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
But so as she migrated and ultimately ended up in a house in Maryland, you're right. That's when she got tied in with the Ross Perot campaign,
Right.
and she was also doing a big genealogy project, and so her whole house was just
Is that when she started all of that? Or did she and Max travel around?
She
And
had traveled around. There was a window of time somewhere that they owned a motorhome, and they traveled around in that motorhome, and they would stop on
courthouses,
on
and
courthouses, and parking
cemeteries,
lots,
you know.
and they
all
spent a
over
while-
east of the Mississippi, probably Virginia. I would
Yes.
guess Virginia and Alabama. I think the Graysons had Madison County below Huntsville.
And I'm not sure where their base was, whether the base was, because they did, like I said, during that whole little cycle to California and Maryland, this house was rented, leased. There was
Yeah.
a family that leased this house that I don't know that I ever met for probably 12 or 15 years. And somewhere in the window of all that was their option to pay some big amount of money and buy it. And I remember some point where they said something like, we either have to move or buy it, and we don't have any money to buy it, and we've got a house up in Dallas that we would trade you. And I remember kind of being on the side of that conversation. So I would have been, probably out of college by that point, and have that conversation. It's like, well, do we really want to take some house in South Dallas as a trade-in on this place, which we had all kind of loved?
And you built
And
it
we
from
said-
scratch.
We said no.
No.
We keep this. And so there was some window when from Maryland, Cynthia came down here where she was probably 60-ish, 70. She was at least 60, maybe 70, where she came down to the window of time when nobody was here, and she had to spend time fixing it up or doing something and renting it again. And I remember that was a window of time, and again, it must be when she was in her 70s, when she was starting to become irrational and not following stuff. So she, like I said, I don't remember the time, but I bet that was somewhere in her 70s. So prior to that, she got involved with the Ross Perot campaign. I know at some point, at the end of his whole run for president, she was invited to his house in Dallas. Big party. All you buddies, come help me.
Mm-hmm.
I know when she was living in Maryland, there was an incident that happened that we were, Jim was there, and I was married at that time, and my wife was there, and some question came up, and she said, "Oh, well, I'll call Senator so-and-so," and she just gets on the phone and calls some senator and asks him some question.
Yeah.
And so there was a window there that she was being still the champion for teachers' pay raises, teachers' salaries, even in Washington, D.C.
Did she give testimony at some congressional hearings?
I don't know the story of that.
It seemed to
She
me I recall
probably did
something.
because she was, that close to Washington, and she
Yeah.
would do a ton of stuff related to all those passions, and as well as having just her kitchen table full of things on genealogy, stuff that she, interviews she had done with people, and little pieces some great uncles.
And Jim sort of helped edit and put all that together.
Jim helped her
computer
with-
work.
Yeah, this is when whatever program that was, genealogy.me or something,
Yeah.
one of the genealogy online things had come about, and Jim was helping her do that, and she was pretty hip there. What I don't remember, following that and following the Rossborough party in Dallas was sometime in there that she was kind of losing it here. It seems
Well,
to me.
wait, this genealogy thing, I think Mom and Dad went with her to England.
Really?
Yeah. I remember something
I kind
where
of remember
they
something
went
about
to
going to
England or Scotland or Ireland or
Yeah.
someplace over there in the Great Britain area for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or a month while she researched. Did I make that up? I think that happened.
We need to check with Jim and see if he remembers. Debbie might. I don't remember. It's not something in my mind that I specifically remember them doing, but
Because wasn't there some guy they met over there that contacted somebody later on to try to grab all of her information before it was lost or something? Maybe later when she passed away or something. I don't know, but it seemed like some guy wanted to kind of take the baton and run with it a little bit.
The only thing that I know is that there was a relative of ours who was older than me, older than Cynthia, who owned 3 RV parks out in West Texas, and but spry. He's probably 90 years old.
It was on your dad's side or your mom's
He's
side?
on my mom's side, a distant cousin somehow. Not even an Elledge, but maybe through the Batemans or through one of these weird fourth party names that are somewhere in our family. And he had a lot of stuff. He had a combination of stuff that he wanted to give us, and that he just kept asking us for one of the books that she did. She did 3 or 4 books, and we could never find all copies of all the books or even where they were, but there was a book, he kept insisting that she had done this 4th or 5th book, and we didn't know anything about it.
Well, I know that she did a 3-volume set and a 1-volume set.
Yeah, so.
And we've got a couple of those complete sets. And I'll interdict something about Cynthia. I think it was around 1990. We lived in Spring City, Tennessee, Jackie and I. And she called and said she was going to be going to Madison County, south where Huntsville is, to study some Grayson history down there. And do we want to go with her? And Jackie and I went with her. At least I did. I think Jackie was there too. But we drove down there with her, and we stopped at this little Presbyterian church, I think it was, a little bitty cracker box church. And we were to meet somebody there that she had prearranged. Well, we got there, and there was this young man who was, I think, a government or civics or history teacher at the local high school. And he had taped to the walls of this fellowship hall all sorts of old newspaper articles and censuses and memorabilia having to do with the Graysons. And that's where I learned that a Grayson, but the reason that name was so big in that county was that he was one of the original surveyors of the Louisiana Purchase in that area, and had all this land and everything because he was the surveyor. He got a choice pick of lands, I guess. And then from that little meeting, I think we might have had a little lunch and get together, and there were some women of the church that prepared us some stuff. And then there was a team of us, 4, 5, 6, a dozen, I can't remember, that we traveled another 15, 20 minutes and stopped along some road and walked into the woods. And there, into the woods where nobody could see it, there's an ancient wrought iron fence around a little cemetery area with a few graves. I don't remember headstones, but I remember seeing mounded up areas like something was buried there,
Yeah.
And I don't know, Cynthia, knew so much about all that stuff. I think we met a lady named Falkenberg or something like that with an F, and she was a very old lady, and Cynthia got all her stories, and she was just collecting information, voracious collector of genealogical information, and she had hundreds of letters back and forth from years from all these people she had contacted for her book and getting all of their information. And wow, so much was lost in her head when she finally passed away.
And I'm not sure where that raw information is. We suspect that it ended up in Jim's basement. And there was a window that Jim and I went down and dug through everything to try to see if we could find anything that resembled her sort of raw notes, just to package those up and at least have them there.
Box them up somewhere.
But the only person that sort of came into our life that seemed to want to continue with this was this old man
in West Texas.
That owned these RV parks. And Debbie and I drove out to meet him, and we actually took some stuff. It's like, okay, this is all we have. This is the only thing I know of. We showed him the books. He said, I have that one, I have that one, I have all those books. But your mom was working on another one. It's like, well, it's
We don't
never
know.
got in print. And, he gave us some stuff, which I don't even remember exactly what he gave us, but he gave us something on something. Then that ends up with her back. Max and Cynthia both lived in Maryland. Max died in Maryland. We had him cremated. We brought him back to Texas, and a bunch of us had dug a hole and put his ashes in the
Liberty
Cemetery.
Athens.
And then Cynthia continued to live until we still had her house.
Didn't we celebrate her 80th birthday at some special lake outside of Dallas?
It was White Rock Lake here. I was trying to think whether it was
She was still of her right mind then. Was she 80 or 70?
Yeah, it was 80.
80.
I've tried to think about whether it's her 60th or her 80th, but it was her 80th, and so she would have, after that, gone back to Maryland to the house. It was that window as she became 82 and 83 that Jim was dealing with her. Max had passed away. She would get lost somewhere in Maryland, and a highway patrolman would call Jim and say, come get your mom.
Yeah.
And we went through this whole window of hiding the keys to her car, and she would call the Ford company and have them come out and make her a new key to her car. And then we went through all the stuff about her having an expired license and taking her to the DMV to get a new license. And we couldn't convince her, and we just sort of sicked her on the employee at the DMV to tell her that she couldn't have a license.
Yeah.
And
that's when you told me the other day she has this handicap parking.
handicap parking ticket that says you can park anywhere in a handicap zone. And so since I can do that, that means I can drive over there and park.
All right.
So that means I can drive.
You need to give me a license.
Give me a license. She didn't think she needed a license. As long as she had this parking permit, it's like, if I get my car there, that's legal. If I'm sitting there in my car.
Sometime in the 90s, Jackie and I drove up there and visited her. I don't know how long. I'm not sure. I think we came up there to visit her, and then we spent a little time. I think we stayed at her house and took the metro into D.C. to tool around D.C. a little bit. And while we were there, she made us dinner, and she made us what we call nanny cinnamon roll, you know,
Yeah.
and she wanted to do that. And
Did
she
she-
was so hospitable
Did she
to us.
drive you anywhere?
I don't think she drove us anywhere. We came with our own car, and
Yeah.
you know, we went around.
So I'm just wondering, you know, at what point did she start losing it? I know that.
But I know a lot of her research materials were kind of there, because there was a
Yeah.
section of the house, I can't remember exactly, but there was a section of the house where she had all her stuff, and Jim had been working with her, and
Well, I know for a
files
while that we somehow. Okay, so here I'm trying to think of how we disposed of her house, but what I remember is she packed up some stuff into Jim's basement, went to live with Jim. He modified a downstairs bathroom to have a walk-in shower because she was still
in his current house or different
in
house?
his current house,
Okay.
the
Huge
big
house.
four-story huge house, and so I was trying to go, well, what did he do with his house? Because when she died, we sold her house, but when she moved in with Jim, he found somebody to rent her house.
Oh, I see.
And
Yeah.
so we had somebody renting this house and somebody renting that house, and she was still actually managing the finances of those cash flows, and went to live with Jim, modified some stuff to make it. We kept finding situations that Jim and Patricia couldn't be there all day to care for her, and she would be doing scary things when they came home, that she would, you know, be on the floor with food everywhere, and just, you know, realized that we needed to do something. And so they checked up there, and it was going to be like, you know, $6,000 a month to find a care. And I checked down here, and we had a great place in Dripping that was much, whatever it was much more reasonable. And so we somehow got her down here. I don't know whether we flew her, Jim flew with her, but we got her down here and got her plugged into this little nursing home here. And after a few months, we would get calls from them saying, you know, your mom is in the administrator's office, once again, rearranging her desk and calling people and bossing people. And we don't have a way to lock people up here. And so it's not working. And so they suggested, and somehow I found a nursing home in Georgetown, you know, north of here. And that wasn't great because nobody lived in Georgetown, but we moved her up there. It was a lockable facility where they could lock them into an area, and they could move around and do crazy old person stuff. And I would at that time I was making trips back and forth pretty much every week, so I would see her coming and see her going, like 2 different times during the week. I would stop by and take her a milkshake and check on her, and that was about the only contact. And then at some
Was
point,
she ever diabetic like my mom?
she was never diabetic. I don't remember any.
But you know, the strongest memory I have of both your mom and my mom was these were dynamic, energetic women.
Yeah.
And they were always doing.
Yeah.
You know, very active.
Well, after the 80th birthday party where we made cinnamon rolls at White Rock Lake in Dallas, and then until about her being 85 or 86 and somewhere living with Jim, and then having to come back down here and go through all that. Somewhere in that window, I do remember her flying down here. You know, she got here on her own. She was doing stuff, and I remember there was a person living here. That's what it was. There was an architect and his wife that had rented this house, and they were willing, and he was willing to put his architectural design into trimming out these windows. Like everything you see here that's a big trim sort of thing was something he envisioned, and he ultimately negotiated as part of a flood repair budget. We had, when the architect was living here, a water line broke, flooded all this area. This used to be carpet, and made a big mess. And we got some $50,000 or $60,000 settlement. And I had made a deal with him since I was living in Dallas that if we had $60,000 in the bank, if he would supervise taking the carpet out and getting the floor finished, and he kept saying, you know, we got plenty of money, let's redo the kitchen, and he, all those cabinets in the kitchen he spec'd and had brought in.
Oh, this is a replacement.
And this is all replacement cabinets and everything in here. The little green and beige is his idea. So I had an architect living here who was willing to take that money and supervise at no expense, fixing the house nice. And somewhere my mom came down.
Did you give him the whole tranche of money?
No, we just you know, I administered the checking account.
Yeah.
And he said, I got a guy that's, you know, needs $12,000 till I put these cabinets in. And so Cynthia kind of got plugged into that. I thought, doing a pretty good job. She came down and started arguing with him about stuff.
Mm.
And I remember the big argument was, and it was a silly argument, was that somehow she had had somebody from Home Depot come out and replace the toilet in the guest side. And if you take time to look at toilets, you have a choice of round toilets or oblong toilets.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, an oblong toilet, because the way a man is built, it's nice to have that space. So part of your body can be there.
Yeah.
And so I made some offhand comment of her, like, you know, we need to be an oblong thing. Well, I'm perfectly fine on a round one. Well, but if we're spending the money, I think we need to get an oblong one.
Yeah.
We had this argument, so I don't want one of those men's toilet in here.
She said that? Oh, okay.
So we had this giant argument, and, you know, when she left, I got an oblong toilet and changed it. But she was arguing with the architect, you know, and cursing at him. I mean, every now and then she was like getting to be off, that old person thing that you kind of get irrational.
Really?
But then following that, she went back to live with Jim, and he was the one that reported to me, you know, I found her doing crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's somewhere in that window between her 80th birthday and about 82 or 83 or 84 is when some things happened, and her driving became an issue, and her living with Jim became an issue, and her house was rented out for somebody. And then she ended up in a nursing home in Dallas, where she just wasted away and passed away there.
What year did she pass? Do you know?
I think she was getting close to being 89. Yeah, she'd kind of almost run about 10 years after.
And what year was that?
I wouldn't exactly know what year that would be. Trying to place.
Was it after the year 2000?
Must have been, yeah, because in that window between 2001 and now is when I was making these trips. So definitely it was in 2002, 3, 4, somewhere in there, probably. Okay. Maybe 5, 6, 7.
All right, let's switch to off of your mom. We've talked about your mom and dad.
You want to pause that and try to start another file?
Yeah, let's do that. Oh my gosh, it's gone. Let's see how much we lost. Okay, here it is. Let's see.